Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this extraordinary event with a wonderful panel on the Collective film. Collective has been directed by Alexander Nanau, and tonight we're very lucky to have Catalin Tolontan with us, the lead investigative journalist. We are here, we're sponsored by, tonight's event is sponsored by Dogwoof, the producers of the documentary, and the Romanian Cultural Institute in London. My name is Sarah Clarke. I lead the Europe and Central Asia team of Article 19, which is the global freedom of expression and information organization. We work on press freedom, the safety of journalists, the protection of whistleblowers and sources, on anti-corruption, and access to information all over the world. So if you've seen this documentary, you'll see just what a strong resonance it has with all of those themes. The documentary was officially launched here in the UK on the 20th of November, and you will have the link to watch it yourselves if you haven't already had the chance. It has been launched to universal acclaim, 5-star reviews, critics' choices in the New York Times, The Guardian, the LA Times, and media all over the world, and rightly so. Not only is this a really staggering portrayal of endemic corruption, but also of the bravery of the survivors and their families of the collective fire 5 years ago, and of the journalists and other civil society activists who worked towards uncovering the vast corruption at its root. So tonight I'm joined by Alexander and Catalin, so I'll ask you to put on your cameras. And so what we're going to do is have a Q&A session, a discussion between ourselves on some of the key themes of the documentary, and then we'll move to a Q&A with the audience. So I'd really invite all of you to submit your questions through the Q&A chat. And then you'll have a chance for those questions to be asked to Alexander and Catalin a little later on. So just to begin, and let's begin at the beginning. So for both of you, Catalin and Alexander, how did you come to this extraordinary story, and how did you come to work with one another? And Catalin, I was asking you this a little earlier, whether you came, how did you come to trust Alexander, or did you come to allow him into your reporting rooms as you uncovered this horrifying level of corruption in the healthcare system in Romania? So maybe we might start with you, Alexander, and just how you came to the perspective you did to make this documentary.
Yeah, I mean, because you asked how we came to this great story, I mean, the story is something that life has written in a way. And it's great while we watch it as a story, for sure. It's a story that tells us a lot about us, about the way human beings function. But it's a horrible story that life has written in Romania, and life keeps writing in Romania, because there are still people that like the story to be as it is also in the film. The first thing that triggered for sure our attention to make a film was the fact that this tragedy started demonstrations in Romania. And it was for the first time after 30 years after the revolution that we really had mass demonstrations that within a night actually came together most of all, a young generation that organized on Facebook under the motto "Corruption Kills," and they claimed from the whole political class to step back and reform, because it became clear that corruption that we knew and we know exists in the Romanian society, and that it is really existent on every layer of society, and it's something that comes out of the communist system, and it's very hard to get rid of it. But let's say the symbol of corruption in Romania was and is the political class, and they impose, the power imposes corruption as a way the society works. And so these demonstrations, because people understood that such a popular club cannot function in the center of Bucharest without permits, and cannot function without the firemen having approved it. So how could firemen or a mayor approve a club that has no fire exits, but is constantly, has a lot of concerts and events? That was the first thing. And when these demonstrations erupted, I thought that it felt like as if society is going to change now, as if in a way there was this feeling that enough is enough, and there will be a turning point in a way in this very young democracy, and the young generation is finally claiming their world back from, let's say, a society that was formed by their parents' generation, a society that was formed most of all by the tolerance of corruption by their parents. But then what overlapped was for sure the fact that during these first days we were watching TV, and all you could see on TV was, for sure, it was a grieving nation. Everybody was hit by this tragedy, because everybody thought it could have been my children, or it could have been me in the club. But it became very fast clear that the authorities that came out every half of an hour, they came out in front of the TV to propagate how great they are reacting to the catastrophe, how good the healthcare system is, how they will rescue these people, and how well prepared they are. And while voices already said, like, these people are burn patients, they have to be transferred to burn clinics, which you don't have, they refused to transfer the people. And as you see in the film, although parents had already a place in a hospital abroad, like Alexander Hoxha's family in Vienna, which, by the way, it is not in the film, but that hospital bed for Alexander Hoxha was organized by Vlad Voiculescu when he was still a patients activist. And they refused. For example, I listened to a recording made in the office of the hospital manager while they were begging him to let Alexander be flown out, and he refused. So basically, when that happened, we understood what was happening, because the government that was in place back then had a lot of corruption scandals behind them. We knew that they are basically just unprofessional, incompetent people that are there, and suddenly they appear on TV flanked by doctors who were just not saying a word, were just nodding while politicians said, we can do that, we have the best healthcare system. So basically we assisted how let's say the highest ranks in the state, with the highest ranks in the medical system in Romania, together in an organized manner, decided to lie to 18 million people that they can treat burn patients, knowing that they will be infected and knowing that many of them will die. And I think that triggered our attention, and the only ones that really very fast understood they cannot, as journalists, just propagate what this organized group is lying, were sports journalists, was Catalin and Mirela and Răzvan, who started to investigate, first of all, the fire department, who lied that they didn't know where the club was. And they proved that they not only knew it, they even authorized it. And another lie that was just mind-blowing. They were lying all the time that the burn patients are treated in a newly opened, fully very modern burn unit at the biggest hospital in Bucharest. And the Gazeta Sporturilor and the team there revealed that it was a lie. This burn unit was closed with a lock, and it was basically just inaugurated months earlier in order to justify, I guess, the money that was spent there for equipment. So I guess, again, bribes that had to be taken were more important than the fact that this burn unit was not functioning. And then we started to approach the journalists and thought that they might be good characters to follow.
Thank you, Alexander. And Catalin, I think you know, one of the most striking and really horrifying moments of the film is the footage of the fire itself. And right before it happens, the band finished their song by saying, "Fuck all your wicked corruption, it's been there since our inception." And then the fire starts, and they say this is not part of the script. And I wanted to ask you, as a sports journalist and as a veteran journalist investigating corruption, you know, what was it for you that, you know, that this story in particular grabbed you, and why do you think, as a sports, why was it a sports paper that led this investigation?
So first I have to say that my English is rather rusty, and I beg you for your British politely. Then yeah, you are right, because a sport newspaper involved in anti-corruption for more than 2 decades, it's not only strange, it's incongruent, to quote the Variety, the American cinema magazine. They call us an incongruent team, and they are right. Because we have been working in investigation for almost 30 years. First in sports, of course. Then the politician get into the sport, and for money, for image, for the elections, and we start to investigate the politician, the ministers. I think we have some cases, to make the long story short, some cases in the last 20 years, and the public. And this is very interesting, and I think it's not only for Romania, because the public perceived our job not only through the informations, but through the effects, the results. They told the results means sometimes jail for the corrupt people. Of course, this is not up to us, and we made a distinction every year. We are just a newsroom, we are not a courtroom. We don't put people in jail, but they expect year after year the results. And because we have the results, yes, and some ministers go in jail in the last 20 years, and not only the two ministers, a lot of politicians, a lot of businessmen, a lot of, even a football player, a well-known football player all over the world, the former captain of Romanian football team and also of Barcelona team, named Gică Popescu. He went in jail after one investigation, and they trust us year after year. And after the collective fire, they came to us. And I think in 1 month, also Alex came to us. And I made a lot of mistakes. The first mistake is to reject his proposal with narrow-minded, because we talk about ourselves and about the sources, about their protection in terms of sanctuary. We see the newsroom like a safe place for the sources first. This is the first rules. And after that, I think in 2 weeks, I called Alex and I told him, okay, we don't know if we have anything, maybe we have, but we change our mind because we think that we are an old-fashioned journalist. We are working the daily newspaper, and maybe the younger generation need another approach, another angle to see what means the information, the public service, and the media. And the second big mistake, it was really silly, after 1 year and 4 months, when Alex and his team, his very small team, because he came alone half a time, and another half with another one and 2 people maybe. Then after 1 year and 4 months, I asked, okay, and you will launch the film in 2 months, in 3 months, and he told me, no, in 4 years, maybe in 4 years. Okay, and I told him, okay, nobody cares in 4 years about about these investigations and about these facts. And he told me, and I will remember all my life. Okay, we will see, because I think what we found here is very interesting for more than 2 decades, in forward from 2016, 2017, sorry. So this was the inception of the movie. First with people trust, and then with the bond between Alex and our newsroom.
Thank you, Catalin. Alexander, just back to you. I wanted to ask you, I think the other really important figures in the film are the survivors and the families of those who died both in the fire and in the due to the corruption and mismanagement afterwards. You have this incredibly intimate portrayal of the survivors and of the families in, at a time where people are at their most vulnerable, at the prosthetics clinic, at the graveside, and of course Teddy, the wonderful, beautiful Teddy, who's so positive and hopeful, and whose photographs were taken. How did you build the trust? How did you build their trust? And how did you ensure that their voices and their stories were portrayed with the dignity that you managed to portray them with? I think it has a lot to do with the lens that you used and giving them their voice. But I'd love you to talk a bit about that, please.
I mean, these are 2 different. So your questions are 2 different parts. First of all, how do you get access is basically the point, and then the way you treat them in the story and the way you treat them in your relationship to them. That's the part, of this job, and everybody does it differently. And it's also the part of how you treat the story in the editing room. How you portray people, and how much you show of people, and how much you leave to the viewers' imagination, and how much people actually put into a character. But to start with the access was not easy, because at that time in the beginning, you have to imagine that the whole Romanian media was assaulting these people. Like everybody wanted to know. It's like, it's normal. Every time there's a tragedy, everybody wants to know how, how is the pain? How do people suffer? What do they go through? And so it was very hard, as also with the journalists, because they also could not really imagine what I am proposing, because I was proposing, I am not a broadcaster, I don't want just to film with you for half a day and then make a material and broadcast it. I want to follow you for weeks, maybe months. And that was something strange for everybody, because nobody can really imagine what it is, observational filmmaking, that you really, basically you're asking people to, would you be fine for me to share your life with me? Because basically that's what happens. You step into their lives and share their lives. So nobody could really, understand it. And also the families in that situation, and the victims that were very vulnerable, for sure, also with the looks, and it is, all the pain they went through, young people that were burned. It was very hard for everybody to trust me. But what happened is that after we started the project and we started to get in contact with people, and we realized it will be hard, basically one day I went to the studio of a Romanian artist called Dan Berjovski. I don't know even why. I just know I left my office, had the feeling I will have to go now there. Somebody told me at a certain point it would be interesting to make a film about him, and that was still in the back of my mind. And I went there, and there was Mihai Grecia, who is a survivor from the club, but who is also a filmmaker and was friends with the band. And Mihai was sitting in Dan's office telling him his story. And I sat down, listened to his story. And at the end I said, listen, Mihai, we started a project. We started a film about this, about your story. Would you like to join the band? He joined our team and became one of our closest collaborators, while he was also still doing treatment. So he really had to do a lot of treatment, because he was over a month in coma. He was also burned. So he put a lot of effort in going to treatment and then coming to the office or to where we were shooting. And basically it was because Mihai was on the team that the families and the victims started to trust us, or to trust me, because Mihai being on the team, it was easier for them to accept what he was telling them, how I work and how that will happen. And so together we started also to do a lot of interviews with a lot of families and victims, and filmed also with our victims. But we realized then also in the editing room that Teddy became in a way the symbol of the young people that survived, and Alexander's parents became in a way the symbol for all parents.
And it was just beautifully captured. And Catalin, coming back to you, I think one of the really important issues that came up was sort of what is going on with press freedom in Romania. There's a couple of moments that were really concerning in the film. So there's a moment where you say, in one of the TV appearances, you said, that this is the state of our press, that it's sports journalists who have to take the lead in this investigation. You obviously say many times, if we stay silent, we are complicit. And I suppose I wanted to ask you about what's going on with press freedom, but also what are the dangers that you're facing? Because there's that very concerning moment where your colleague reveals that the intelligence services have warned her from continuing the investigation, and that you're families. It would be best for your families, a very thinly veiled threat for you not to continue. It's very hard to watch this and not think of those journalists like Daphne Caruana Galizia and Jan Kuciak in Malta and Slovakia who were assassinated for doing work not unlike the work that you were doing. And we know how dangerous this sort of investigative reporting is. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the state of press freedom and media capture, media ownership, some of the threats you faced, both from the security services and also, I think, from maybe pro-government media. We saw also a lot of minimizing and dismissing of your work, and even accusations that you had driven Dan Condrea, the head of Hexipharma, to his suicide. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Thanks.
Yes, I think so. Even if it's okay, uneasy for me and for us, I think the confrontation on the TV is normal, it's logical, it's profitable for the people, and I'm not upset about the question because my colleagues have the right to put the question about us and about our work. And in the movie, I think you don't see only one journalist, only a small investigation team, or only a newsroom, Gazeta Sportul newsroom. No, I think in this movie you can see a lot of journalists ask good questions for the ministries, even if it's about Vlad Voiculescu, which is a young and fresh minister. He received a lot of well-targeted questions, and I didn't put this landscape in the left wing or the right wing, or who is against us, who is with us in time of investigation, because we are all journalists, even if, of course, in Romania, but this is the same situation, not similar, but quite the same in UK, in US. We have a lot of polarization in Romanian media, but we do our job. Even it's about Antenna 3, and if there are some people, some Romanian people on the Facebook right now, on the live streaming, they are upset maybe about Antenna 3. I know very well, but some question in the movie, they put some very good question, and the guys from Antenna 3, yes, or then the second issue about our safety. Okay, we have a lot of good comparison in the last weeks, in the last months. The Guardian, the Times compared us with Bernstein and Woodward, and it's overwhelming. Sorry, and it's too much. I feel that it's rewarding too much, because to be honest, and I take your question right now about the landscape in East of Europe and in Romania, the media landscape. Yes, we have neither the proper education nor the means to compare the Eastern European press with the Western press. And if we did not take into account this huge gap between the Western and the Eastern media, we would create the same false expectation as all our ex-communist societies had, that we can transform overnight. And it's not true. We have a lot of problem there. it's impossible to make a comparison between us and New York Times, or between us and the Guardian, because we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the budget, and we don't have the means, yes, to what we try is to do our best every day. With a smaller team than the Guardian, of course, yes. We have only, now in Romania, and I give you the average figure. A normal newsroom, a newspaper newsroom, yes, not a TV station, a newspaper staff means between 40 and 60 journalists and photographers and layouter and all team, almost all team. We are now maybe 70 in Gazeta Sportor and 70 in the other newspaper, daily newspaper named Libertatea, because now we used to work for a Swiss publishing house named Ringie. And we are bigger than the others because we are owned by a Western media group. Yes. What you can do with 40 journalists every day, seven a day per week, more than 18 hours per day, with a website, with a newspaper, it's almost impossible to track all the news, to cover all the issues, and we have a lot of issues, what you saw in the movie. And I think this is a honest description for our situation, and I'm afraid it's not only about Romania. I think it's all over the east of Europe. And about the risks, okay, we have it, but it's our job description. The real risk takes by the whistleblowers, because they don't have in their job description to talk with the people through the journalists. And we have to protect them. And it's very interesting how we and Alex here try to protect them. We have norms. We talk first with them, and we told them, okay, it's a director. He wants to launch a movie, maybe in, I don't know, in few years. And if you want to talk with him, please came in our newsroom, because we talk with them. And after that, I think it's better to Alex to say what's happening next, because this is what it used to be before this is the normal way for the media, yes, with journalists talk with the peoples. But when appears another branch, a strange branch with the camera, everything is changed. Alex, please, I think it's your
Alex, as the strange branch, could you talk about that?
Yeah, so basically, with some of the whistleblowers, for sure, it was that the journalists would tell us, tonight whistleblowers will come in, and then we asked them if they could just, at least give them a hint that there will be maybe a discussion with the film team. And I guess the whistleblowers also didn't really have an imagination for what they mean. I mean, they wanted to come to this journalist. They were desperate to place their inside information. And so Catalin and Mirella said, listen, I mean, you can have 5 minutes to talk to the whistleblowers, explain what you do. If they accept, fine. If they don't accept, please, you have to leave the newsroom and let us do our work. And that's also how it happened. So I talked to the whistleblowers, explained what I'm doing, and had a very clear understanding with them that we film what will happen between them and the journalists, but they can be assured that nothing will be made public, that we still have to film for several months maybe, and then edit maybe for another year. So it will take at least 1 to 2 or 3 years until we release the film. And only at that moment in time when we release the film, we will watch together the scenes with them, and they can decide if they want to go public. For some whistleblowers, it was new because they were not public. Others already went public in the media before we launched the film. They decided to make their identity public. But that was our understanding with them, so that we really don't violate in a way this sacred thing between journalists and whistleblowers. And luckily, as you see also with the accountants that come and blow the whistle, they were courageous women and were fine with it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the accountants, the doctors, the person who filmed the worms, the
It's the same doctor. So the whistleblower, basically, that's also what for me is so important for the story, and so to understand that it takes one person to change things, because it's the same doctor that came with the worms, with the footage with the worms. That was source number 0 of something that changed really the Romanian society, healthcare system, and rescued, I think, many lives. Because of her, the journalists came to understand that disinfectants were part of the problem with the infections. And if it wouldn't have been her, there would still be disinfections in hospitals. It wouldn't have been her, people until today basically would not be sure if the lie of the authorities is not actually true. Because it took her courage for journalists to start their work and really, make things public that proved that the burn patients were infected. Yeah. And it went so far just to understand, what for us was not possible anymore to include in the film. When we talk about truth and lie and how journalists try to be condemned by the power as being fake journalists and so forth, behind closed doors, so they said there are no infections in our hospitals, first of all. Then they said the patients were not infected in hospitals, they were infected on the asphalt when they came out of the club, which is complete nonsense. Hospital infections are in hospitals. For sure, in the meantime, there are also hospital infections outside hospitals. People bring them there, but not on the asphalt in front of a club. And then the most incredible thing for me is you have to imagine doctors and hospital managers, when they finally accepted for patients to be transferred also to England, erased data from the files of these patients that were transferred. So first they lied they have no infections, and then when they were forced to transfer them, they erased the data that they are infected. So the doctors in the other countries where the patients were received would not understand why these patients are on the toughest antibiotics. Because they thought, like, if these patients are not infected, why would we, put so much pressure on their systems, on their body with these antibiotics? And some took them off the antibiotics. So the boy you see that died in the film, Alex Hodja, he is a victim of the fact that these people erased his data. And the doctors in Vienna didn't know what to do and tried to find the right cocktail for his body, and also had to do their own tests to see if the body is infected, which they lost again 2 or 3 days to see what's actually inside his body, what's going on.
Alexander, I think it's his father who says, my son was the victim of a communications error. Is that
yeah, he says what he was told. So he was told, it was not an intention of ours not to transfer him. We had a problem of communication. It's not clear what they meant.
I think also what's amazing about the doctor is you begin to see that this is systematic, because she outlines that this is a full system involved in corruption from the moment patients are entering hospitals and having to pay for surgery. She talks about her mother saying it's because you've lost your humanity.
Yeah, it's a system, sorry to interrupt you, it's a system that doesn't start with the bribe at the hospital door. It's a system that starts with the bribe in medical school. After the, I think last year, when was that? Then the heads of the medical school are also the big heads of the Romanian healthcare system, and they control it fully. So last year, one of them, Dr. Beuran, or what is his name, was caught because they caught him how he got a bribe of 10,000 euro from a doctor to place him in a certain position in a hospital. And that is basically how the system works. So as a patient, you have to imagine you get into a hospital and there's a doctor in front of you, and you cannot be sure if this doctor is there because of his professional competence or because he was more wicked to have more money in the meantime and pay his boss more money to put him into that position. So the bribe starts in medical school. They learn that they don't have to be professionally competent. They learn that the way to advance in the Romanian healthcare system is dependent on how smart you are to bribe the right people in the healthcare system. And that's what the doctor describes, and her mother, when she says, "You are not human anymore."
Thank you, Alexander. Caitlin, I just want to go to a few of the audience questions. So there's a great question asking, given the attacks on the credibility of news actors, so the fake news discourse, do you think you could break the same story today the way you did 5 years ago? Or would it be silenced as a conspiracy?
Oh, you are right. A very good question. Last year, we discovered 2 fake doctors in Romania. Fake means without any medical study, and they are working in operating rooms for one of them in a public hospital for many years. And one of the effects of collective movie for us, for sure, is a lot of people came to us every day. Till the movie, I think we have 10, 20 messages per day with tips, with people stories. Now we have more than 80 every day. And I think my answer is yes, of course we can, and we do, because the people have more courage, the people from hospitals, because they saw Camelia Arroyo, because she became public whistleblower, not in the movie, I think 2 years ago. She wanted to came in front of the people and to say, okay, I'm the doctor who provided the files from the infections. Of course, his life is not easy right now. He worked in the same hospital, in the same position, and around her is the same bitter landscape, the same bitter human landscape. But the answer, I think, it's yes. Yes, it's not more easy, but we have a lot of tips every day as a journalist.
And I think that's something that we see a lot, is that when you can protect whistleblowers and sources the way you did, and when you're revelations have impact, you empower people to come forward. And that's, I suppose, what's so important and such a testimony to the importance of investigative journalism that you do. Alexander, I just wanted to go back to you. The reception for the film has been deservedly extraordinary, and you've garnered huge praise and talks of Oscars and all sorts of awards. Why do you think that the documentary has such universal resonance? What all of the critics have said is, this could be about so many different countries. It's obviously very much based in Romania, but it has universal resonance, and it feels like now more than ever, in the middle of a pandemic, when we're so concerned about tenders and contracts and our health, and knowing that this could happen to any of us. But why do you think it has had such an impact on its viewers?
I mean, the impact it had, the universal impact we could already feel after we launched it. So basically by end of 2019, it was received incredibly in Venice. And there I thought, okay, it's a premiere, it's moving, it's people react to the tragedy. But then it continued in every country. It continued to be the same reaction of the public. And I think Catalin has a better eye for that than me because of his profession. And he described it best because he said, like, there's the same feeling after the movie that people are blocked because they realize that the way the film shows that people their power over their own lives was taken away. And that's what the film shows, basically, that people are powerless, that this power was taken away by be it the government, be it the people in power, be it the boss people have in their working place. And that's also what the audience described to us. It's the same here. It's not about Romania. It's the same here. It's the same in Switzerland, the same in Belgium, the same in the Netherlands. We really don't know if our government, or the ones that pretend to use the power that we gave them, if they use it in our service. So basically, there is a deep fear that the social contract is not working at all anymore. That basically it is not valid anymore. And back then, we felt and talked about it, that we felt that people think, like, if there would be a crisis that would hit our society, we don't know if we would survive and how we would survive, because basically the people that are now in charge in all these countries are incompetent. In most countries, politicians are incompetent because we live in times where it's not attractive anymore to go into politics. It's more attractive to do business. All the smart people, let's say, are doing their private business, are not going to politics. So the incompetent people that were left over are in politics. Even in America, it needs a very stupid businessman to become a politician. It couldn't be a smart one.
No, exactly. And I think, in the UK, I suppose many of us watching think inescapably of the resonance with the parallels with the Grenfell fire tragedy, and the horrific inquiry that's going on at the moment into state failures and corruption and around that fire and its aftermath. And then that comes at a time where there are huge concerns about the government's mishandling of coronavirus and having the highest death rate in Europe, and concerns around corruption over the tendering process around COVID to pro-government businesses. So I think it, as you said, every country has its own resonance, but watching it from the UK perspective, it just felt very, very close. And I would imagine it's the same on so many, for so many different audiences.
I think most of all for the UK, the fact that Brexit happened on the basis of lies and people were tricked into champion for something that was actually a big lie. And again, about the healthcare system, it was about the NHS and this 40 billion or whatever that they lied the NHS would get.
350 million a week, or was it 300?
Yeah, something like that. So I traveled the world end of last year, and I met young British people that basically voted for the Brexit and said they can't talk about it. You could see that they had a trauma. They went through a trauma because they realized how they were fooled and how they contributed to the worst thing Great Britain is doing right now in its history of the last year. You know, a country that rescued Europe is now, you know, throwing itself in the ocean alone. I mean, it's unbelievable. And that is the fear. That if you imagine that, you can imagine the feeling of an audience realizing that they were tricked, that their power was taken away. And that was what happened with Brexit, right? The power of the people was taken away. They were lied to, and they were made to do suicide in a way, and even champion for it.
Yeah, yes, excuse me. We really see them at the end of the movie very angry, but I think not despair. It's like call to action, you know. And they told us, because we so angry in Norway, in Switzerland, and okay, like as a journalist, I think, okay, they are upset with us. What's matter here? No, they are really angry about the system and not about the Romanian system, of course. I was in Tromsø this year, and I saw them so upset about their system, about their hopes. Of course, if we are talking about the Romania, because it's a big debate right now in Romania, if this movie again rise the corrupt image for Romania, no. What I think is collective succeeds to challenge the common image of social stagnation in Romania, the fact, or the lack of democratic reason in Romania, because you saw the whole democratic mechanism in the movie. It's almost the same. Are a lot of press conference, are accountability for the politicians, yes. Are a lot. Are people involved in their futures? You can see this in US in these days, and I think it's very reliable for a society, for a community to see something like this. Even if, of course, I never compared US with Romania in democratic culture. Of course, yes, I'm not crazy, but I think this movie make this kind of huge service for Romania, even if I think it's not in Alex in Alex credo to give an aim for Romania, or in mine. It's not my duty to aim my country in this kind of way.
Well, I think whether you wanted to or not, that's been the impact. And I think, you know, one of the many extraordinary lines, Catalin, that you say during the film is that this was an institutional lie on a state level, propagated through all communication channels. You know, and there's something so Orwellian about what happened, but that we've seen across the board and in many countries. And I was thinking about Trump and some of the press conferences, the insane press conferences around COVID and injecting bleach, etc. But, there was this moment in the press conference with the First Minister for Health. And he says, I am confident our patients are in no danger at this moment. And what was so chilling was he joked and he said, should we bring in extraterrestrials to do the testing? And you look back at that and you think, people are dying at the moment that he's speaking because of state failures. And it just felt so similar to listening to some of the press conferences that we have to listen to at the moment, of similar abdications of responsibility. So a lot of the questions that are coming in, and this is sort of as we move towards the end, is really what happened. So what happened after this expose? I know one of the questions is what happened to Vlad? Did he leave? Did he go to Vienna? But what happened in terms of the legal process? Was anyone held to account? What do you believe was the real story of the death of Condrea, the head of Hexi Pharma? And what's happened to the health system in Romania? Everyone is very conscious that there was another terrible fire recently. So 4 years later, Romania is going into new elections. Where are we now, and what's happened since you finished?
Yes, we have different perspectives, different views. And I'm the optimistic guy, and Alex is the realistic face of the movie. And I think there are, of course, bad news. We don't have any. Yes, we don't have any files in justice in the final stage. We don't have any final verdict right now. Any means from a bunch of 12 dossiers in trial. We have 12, almost 12 trials, yes, after the collective fire, after the corruption cases, after the abuses, but we don't have any final verdict right now, which is, of course, it's sad, yes. The good news is we rose the salary and the income from the whole medical corp in Romania, which means more than 100,000 people, with a double or maybe a triple proportion in only in 2 years, which is huge and is normal and is civilized. And now a doctor in Romania earned more than 3,500, maybe 4,000 euro net per month, sorry, in hand, only from the public hospital. A lot of them working also for the private hospital, and they double this amount. And this is I think this is almost the normal earn for a doctor in East of Europe for sure. Maybe in Europe, we don't know. 8,000, 9,000 euro per month with both hospitals. I think it's more than better.
And without the bribes.
But of course, yes, but they took not so much bribes like 5 years ago. We have a lot of debate in this formula. And also, of course, if you talk with my colleagues, Mirela, it's very upset about the health Romanian system. But in my understanding, it's very, very hard to change a system even in 5 years. when I saw the collective, and for me, the second part of the movie with the whole intestine, the whole bowl, governmental, it's very interesting because I'm shocked. When I saw the movie, I really shocked. I didn't know that they are in the Ministry of Health so incompetence, so lack of humanity, of course. And I think, okay, maybe it's time to rethink the whole paradigm, because I think it's a duty for a new generation, not only for 5 years. This is my point of view.
Thank you. And Alexander, what's your point of view? The pessimist, the realist.
Oh,
Now, the realistic.
I think that after the collective fire and the year that followed with the revelations, I think that a lot changed in Romania on the part of the society. So because the veil was taken off the system that is so corrupt and lacks so much humanity, many people left. So we really had huge numbers of emigration because people said, like, no way, I'm not going to lose my time, because as Catalin says, the time to reform such a system is very long. And people are fed up because it's already 30 years since the revolution, and nobody wants to, there's already a generation that was sacrificed, that was hoping all the time to, that the country will change. So many people left, but at the same time, so many people organized and said, like, we have to take our society back. And we really had a spike of the civil society in Romania. And just to give you an example, on the opposite side, the political part, the traditional political parties are basically one party with different names, with the same people going forth and back between the parties. And there's no reform. They only, like bacteria that learn to become more and more resistant, they only learn how to lie better, how to pretend better. Only, even today, regarding the healthcare system, it's just a daily way of pretending. They're making nice photos around the table and saying, okay, the people are stupid enough to buy the shit that we're going to reform the system. But the civil society, there's, for example, one example of an NGO called Dăruiește Viața, Give Life. And they built a hospital, like from the ground, in 2 years with donations from the people. A fully built modern hospital in 2 years. What politicians promise every 4 years, like now again, they never build hospitals, they just steal the money, make feasibility studies to steal the money, and the hospitals are never done. This NGO basically built a hospital in 2 years with our money, with donated money, and even the band, the world-known band Metallica, donated €250,000 to it. So we need Metallica to come to Europe, to Romania, to donate the money, because our politicians are stealing our money that we pay from our taxes for hospitals. So that's the contrast in the Romanian society. Society is developing and is more and more modern, and people know their values and know what they want. The political class does not, and they don't.
And in this time,
yeah.
Sorry, Alex. And in this time, to put complementary, yes, in this time, one mayor in Bucharest advertised on TV stations with a lot of money the virtual hospitals. The hospital doesn't exist, and he advertised a virtual hospital, and one of my colleagues saw the spot on TV and told us, okay, but what is this? Because the hospital don't exist, and he advertised a virtual hospital. This is insane. And I think the prosecutors came 1 week ago about this spoil, because this whole advertising campaign, because it's unbelievable.
And they spent a lot of money for the only the advertising campaign was what?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the
a lot of money. I don't know exactly.
Yeah,
that's
but at
the
the same
difference
time we
between
have
the civil society and
at the same time there are reformative parties. So we have since 2 or 3 years we have new parties that are made out of younger people that come out of private businesses that know how business works, and that said we have to get into politics if we want to change things. And you can see that Romanians want a change, because we had local elections 6 or 7 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and these reformative parties really won over major cities in Romania, the major mayors. And the traditional parties are pretty upset about it, because that's where they make their money. And because you asked about Vlad, so Vlad did a lot with his patients activism, with his Magic Camp, where he helps kids with cancer, Magic Home, where he helps the parents of kids that have cancer. But he decided to go into politics, and he's part of one of these reformatory parties. And at the last elections, he wanted actually to become mayor, but that didn't work, because there was another candidate that had more chances, and they made an alliance with other parties. And so they found a formula to have the other one that had a lot more chances and even won the mayory. And he ran basically as the vice mayor that will take care of the healthcare system in Bucharest, which means the hospitals. And that was 2 months ago. And
okay.
The party they made an alliance with changed in an ordinance overnight, changed the law that, they changed the procedure of naming the vice mayors. So basically, Vlad was there for elections for a certain thing. People voted for him to be, to take care of the healthcare system, but they don't let him in. And I think the fact that he, after the election, said like the tolerance towards corruption in the Bucharest healthcare system will be zero. The result of that is that he's still not the vice mayor, and I bet he will never be.
And just a final question on the same track from the audience. Do you see, you've mentioned that civil society is growing and that young people are getting more engaged in politics, or do you see more young people getting involved in the creative industries and in journalism? Do you see a new generation there?
There are wonderful, we have great journalists, and there are independent platforms besides what Catalin does at Libertatea and so forth. There are incredible independent investigative platforms. One is called Recorder, the other one is called Rise Project, and their investigations are huge and are really incredible, but the judicial system doesn't follow up.
Which is, again, the universal lesson that we see out of the Panama Papers and out of many of these other investigations. Is it's not for lack of brilliant investigations and scoops. It's issues around institutional failings and the rule of law. So I just wanted to sort of finish by asking for your last sort of thoughts or comments. I think the line that's really stayed with me is in the interview with Teddy, when the journalists are asking her at that exhibition, you must be very angry when you look in the mirror and think that somebody did this to you. And she said, the only way is forward and up. And then obviously there's that beautiful final line of the song in the film. Heroes don't look like they used to, they look like you. So I think there's great hope as you as you see in the documentary, and that's what I'd like to take from it. But maybe just your last sort of thoughts or comments on your hopes for the documentary.
Yes, just a short story. We were in Craiova. This is a red town in Romania. With the movie, and after the movie, one guy asked Alex, okay, and will be the second movie, the second part of the movie, and one of his friends rise up and told him, no, the second part, it's up to us. We have to involve, and we will make the second part of this movie.
Thanks, Catalin. Alexander?
Yeah, I'm confident that things are changing. You know, you can't stop evolution in a way. And seeing what one person like Camelia Royu, the Dr. Whistleblower, could start, and seeing what other people put together, building a hospital, and people understanding what their rights really are. I'm sure that things are changing. For sure, not at the pace that we wish many times, but the learning curve of a society is a bit different than the learning curve of an individual. But as we also see it in the States, you know, we are very polarized societies. Nevertheless, the fact that the world gets smaller and smaller, and now also through this pandemic, also means that we learn faster how systems work, and we learn faster to react to them and to understand what it needs to change them. And we see all the new generation coming up, you know, be it Friday for Future, or, you know, it's a generation of young people that basically want a very simple thing: to survive, because they might not survive, many of them, in the world that is just now as corrupt as we see it.
Absolutely, and that's another great Dogwoof documentary to go off and watch after this about Greta. So I want on that note to say thank you, a huge thank you to you both, Alexander, Catalin, to Dogwoof, to the Romanian Cultural Institute, but particularly to the survivors and the families who really made the film just so extraordinary. So thank you on behalf of Article 19 for your master.
Thank you for having us.
A real masterpiece. Thank you very much, and thank you all for staying on for tonight's discussion. Good night.
Bye. Bye-bye.